I'm using it to soak a carpet that was in my basement when my sewer backed up. So,
Oh no.
Ooh.
yeah, very exciting times around here.
Those are always fun, right? Okay. It looks like we have audio from the website, and we are ready to go. Zach, are you ready? Zach?
Sorry, yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. All right. It is 4:02. We're going to call this meeting to order. You can see who all is here. We have everyone here today except Mr. Patrick Atkins. He had a work meeting that came up yesterday evening, and so he will not be joining us today. First thing we're going to do is the approval of the minutes from the January 20th, 2021. Do I have a motion for approval or any changes?
I move that we approve.
A second.
Okay, all those in favor, we're just going to raise our hands today so we can see everybody. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. All right, motion carries. Just a couple of housekeeping items for today. The first thing I would like to do is introduce Captain Dan East. He will be our new captain over Animal Services. So Dan, give us a little wave so everyone can see you. So he's going to be the fixer of the problems. So welcome, Dan. We are glad to have you with us. We promise we will be on our best behavior.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Excellent. And then the second thing is we do have a vacant seat. As we know through the email over the past week or so, Dr. Teresa Burks did resign from her position on the board, and we are waiting a mayor appointee of that vet position. So hopefully by our next meeting, that position will be filled, and we will give them a warm welcome as well. The first thing we are going to do on the actual agenda is we are going to give opportunity for public comment. And I am on YouTube here, and I'm not seeing anyone providing public comment at this time. I'm going to give them about 20 more seconds to catch up with us. We're about 30 to 45 seconds ahead than the YouTube channel. All right, I'm not seeing any public comment at this time. We will reserve that. So if we do have public comment, if we've got some people that are getting on, things are a little challenging these days with doing these with Zoom. We want to make sure that the public has an opportunity to speak. The next thing we're going to go to is our staff reports. Lieutenant Hungria, would you please give the report on shelter and field operations?
Well, good afternoon. I'll give you dog bites by district and dog attacks, and then dogs deemed potentially dangerous by district and dogs deemed dangerous by district. So in January in District 1, we had 11 dog bites, and in February we had 12 dog bites in District 1. District 2, in January had 3, in February you had 2. In District 3, you had 3 in January and 5 in February. District 4, you have 11 in January, 4 in February. In District 5, you had 4 in January, 0 in February. District 6, 2 in January and 6 in February. Those were the dog bites by district. The dog attacks by district. District 1 had none in February and January. District 2 had 0 in January, 6 in February. District 3 had 4 in January, 3 in February. District 4 had 2 January, 4 in February. District 5 had 3 in January and 0 in February. District 6 had 2 in January and 3 in February. Dogs deemed dangerous or potentially dangerous by district. District 1 in January had 0, 1 in February. District 2 had 0 in January and 1 in February. District 3 had 3 in January and 0 in February. District 4 had 2 in January, 2 in February. District 5 had nothing in both January and February. And District 6 had 0 in January and 1 in February. Last category would be dogs deemed dangerous by district. Districts 1 and 2 had nothing in both January and February. District 3 had 3 of them in January, 0 in February. And districts 4, 5, and 6 had 0. And that's kind of our stats. Some of the other stuff that we had going on here at the shelter, we over the last 60 days, we ended up executing a couple search warrants. One of the search warrants was in the 1200 block of North Minnesota. We were able to get 24 dogs. It looked like a breeding operation. We had 7 adult dogs. I believe it was 5 males, 2 females, and we also had 17 puppies. We were able to work with our partners over at the Kansas Humane Society. They were able to help us out and take over those dogs for us, especially the puppy, or took over the puppies within 72 hours of us getting them over to the shelter. So we really appreciate them helping us out with that. We also had the Kansas State Department of Agriculture, who also assisted when we did the search warrant. And then I think some of the different rescues helped out with the rehoming the puppies. I think it was Wichita Animal Action League, and then also Beauties and Beasts as well helped out with that, and greatly appreciate it. The day before that, we had a search warrant on Ash, from 1500 block North Ash. It was follow up on a case that came up in January where we found a dog that was tethered and had been deceased. We were over there following up to make contact with the dog owner, and we were able to pull a search warrant on there. We was able to get some drugs, money, and guns, right? Those are some of the things we got out of that. We were able to arrest the owner of the dog, and it also helped out on one of the other complaints that the Patrol North Bureau was working on over in the, I believe it was the 1400 block of North Hillside. So one of our cases actually went and helped out one of the criminal cases there. And then here a couple of weeks ago, we had the very cold temperatures there in the middle of February. I just want to say thanks to all the people who called in to let us know of dogs that were in danger. And then also I want to thank Wichita Animal Action League and then Beauties and Beasts for also going out and identifying dogs for us to go out and check on their welfare, but then them themselves being our extra eyes and ears and going out and also making contact with those residents and helping them get resources to try and keep those dogs protected. So I just want to say thanks on that. Appreciate all your help. And that's all I have from the shelter today. Does anybody have anything?
Does anyone have any questions for the lieutenant before we move forward?
Oh, and Stephanie, one more thing. Jan Jarman will be joining us later. She's just in the trial. So
Perfect. Oh, that stinks. Okay. Lieutenant, thank you very much. We appreciate your service.
all right, thanks.
All right, moving on to new business. It is every year this board accepts the previous year's numbers of the aligned rescues with Wichita Animal Services and KHS. And so I asked for those to be emailed to me. I will send those out to you all in an email after we report today. I had a few that did report in. A couple of them were the largest ones that support KHS and WAS. And so I will start with, we have one from out of the area that submitted, the McPherson County Humane Society. They did 203 cat intakes this year, and they did 198 adoptions. They only do cats, they do not do dogs. The next one on the list is Beauties and Beasts. This was for their 2020 numbers. Cats and kittens intake, 298. Dogs and puppies, 596. Total intakes, 894. Adoptions for cats and kittens, 241. Dogs and puppies, 604, for total adoptions of 845. Network shelter saves, cats and kittens, 1,021. Dogs and puppies, 775. Total network saves, 1,796. The next one is the Wichita Animal Action League's intakes for cats were 792, dogs 325. Those were rabbits and guinea pigs, 19. Adoptions, cats 771, dogs 285, and other, which is also rabbits and guinea pigs, 9. Kansas Humane Society intakes 3,721 for dog, cats 5,149, other 276. Adoptions for dogs 2,584. Cat adoptions 3,245. Other 274. KHS also did provide their total live outcomes. Dog 3,632. Cats were 5,032. Other was 280. I did ask KHS to also provide us with animals sent to rescue that were from WAS and KHS. Dogs 945, cats 1,698, and other were 5. Zach, I will send these to you as soon as the meeting is completed so you can have those for the minutes as well. Do we have any questions? Nope. Okay. Has Jan joined us yet? I don't see her. Okay. We do have some conversation on new business about tethering laws in inclement weather. Elaine, would you like to start that discussion?
We received some community questions, and then also I had questions about, I know there was a story from one of the television outlets about a dog that had frozen to death, and I believe Lieutenant Hungria, you mentioned that I think, did you follow up at that address? But I guess I also spoke with Beauties, which was the rescue mentioned in that story, and they said that that there are some holes in the tethering laws that we have, that it's very difficult to prove that an animal was has been out there for at least an hour. What do we need to do in terms of ordinances or recommendations to make it easier for animal control?
Was that a question to me, or were you just asking a question in general to the board?
I was asking the question to you. Sorry.
Well, I mean, right now with the current resources and staff that I have, it's impossible for me to continue to send staff by and check on the tethered animals for the 1 hour off, 1 hour or 3 hours off, the way it's written. Yeah, I mean, then that's because we have our current attacks and bites and other things that are higher priority calls. So until, it's going to be difficult for us to continue to follow up on tether laws until my staffing numbers improve and I have more resources to actually devote towards that. There probably could be some changes in regards to what's necessary for prosecution. Jan German and I kind of spoke on it a little bit. Is it possible if somebody sits there and videotapes the whole hour long or the whole process of them not being on and off the tether? Is that a possibility? And that's something I'm hoping Jan gets on or can answer when she gets on here, because it'd be that would be on more of the prosecution end of it than as far as what we do. If she says we can have, the rescue groups or citizens or somebody else where they can actually videotape and have that kind of evidence, and they can turn around and cite and then prosecute in court, then that's something that obviously we would look at and see what we can do to get those violators in the court system to address those concerns.
Yeah, it almost, if I understand correctly, would take having an ability to follow up to make spending the resources on the front end to investigate worth it. The ability to follow up legally.
Right. Well, currently right now, just to write the ticket, you would have to go out, start the time. Like right now it's 4:17 or 16:17. We'd have to come back at 17:17. Well, the whole thing is, how do we know the dog wasn't in, wasn't out? But if it's still on there at 7:17, then we could go ahead and cite if it's past the 1 hour mark. However, if I have a tether violation at 21st and 135th, I'm here at 4:15, and then I'm going to 143rd and Pawnee out east, and I'm the one officer that's currently in the field for animal control. That's already a 20-30 minute drive. Time you get out there, and then who knows what other calls are going to come out. So there's some things that need to be addressed on our end as far as resource wise, staffing to be able to address those kind of concerns. I think also the tether law and the stuff with the tether law is really more. Our bigger problems are when we have the different weathers. So we had to have the below freezing weather here a few weeks ago. That's a concern. And then over the summer, it'll be a concern when the temperatures are 100 degrees and you have a dog outside that doesn't have proper food, water, and shelter. So, so those would be the times when we definitely need to get something figured out before the summer if that is what the board wants to do.
Would it help for there to be like certain triggers set by conditions that if an animal is out in such and such a temperature, I'm not sure what the possibilities are, but it would seem like obviously that's more of a concern. So would there be an ability to escalate?
Well, Elaine, I think it's like all things. I think we need to look at the totality of the whole situation. A dog that's sitting out there and it's 85 degrees, yeah, it's not overly hot for us, but if it hasn't had water for 10 hours, that's a problem, right? Or is a dog that's out there with the whole thing of water and it's 100 degrees, is it still a problem? So I think it's one of those things that you have to trust in us to come out there and take a look at the situation and then make a good assessment on the situation. So like we say all the time is just we encourage citizens to call if they see something, give us a call and we'll get out there as soon as we can. So.
Okay. Is there anything we can do as a board to help I know we can advocate with resources with our council members, but anything else in terms of the tethering laws or situations?
I think what I've heard from the different groups is different rescue groups. They're more frustrated with the penalty side of the ordinance. And what I think that's more their concern is the penalty side of it. It's not our ability to write it or their ability to write it. It's more, okay, I write you a citation because that's what I'm going to do. My officer comes out there, they got a tether violation, we're going to write a citation. I can come back tomorrow and write them a citation. But eventually I have to allow them to go to court to answer to the violation. I can't just keep ticket and never give them a chance to go to court. it's kind of frustrating for the violator, but it's also frustrating for the rescue group, because I think they would like to see is that if they're inability to, if they can't keep them off the tether, then should they own the dog? I guess is more the question. So are you?
I do want to make sure that we answer some of the public questions
Sure.
that are in. I'm going to start with the first one here on this topic. What are the priority order of calls?
Okay, our priority is to answer the dog bite calls first. Then it would be our dog attack calls, our dogs that run at large that are aggressive, then our dogs that are running at large. And then it would fall down to the actual overall welfare of the dogs, like the tethering, or, you know, they could be in a fenced yard, just not have food, water, and shelter or something like that. And it would also depend on temperature and stuff outside.
Okay. And none of the, you didn't talk about cats in there, so I just want to make sure that we recognize that as well. So none of these address cats, correct?
No, we really focus on the dogs, and then the cats would be down there with the tether and the check welfare, as far as us going out and follow up. So,
Okay.
So there's a good chance we wouldn't follow up on a dog or a cat call, because it would fall into one of more of those check welfare, check their conditions type of a situation.
Okay. Another public comment, we need to have a one-time warning for excessive tether just to educate any repeat offenders. Need to have animal impounded and be charged with $1,000 fine. Has anyone ever actually been fined $1,000 for the fine?
Are you asking me, or I'm hoping James
Yeah, it
is here
just
by
says
now, because I could tell I don't follow up on the actual punishment stuff.
Okay.
And we don't keep that kind of statistical information here at the office.
Okay.
It's probably something that we could find out.
All right. What is estimated staffing needed to prioritize checking on tethered animals?
I would have to really dig into it. I mean, we need to have, I would say 4 to 5 at least out on the street. And we do have that on occasion when our staffing levels are correct. But
Sure.
but definitely we need to have multiple bodies on the street. And it's hard to just say, hey, because even if I had 6 people on the street, we also have to look at the perspective that there could be 5 people that have been bitten by dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we need to address that, because we're looking at rabies concerns and stuff like that. We're talking about overall public health. And I understand, and I'm not downplaying that the dog on a tether is not important as well, but I think the majority of the public would like us to focus on going and getting to those calls with the citizen who's been bitten, so we can track that dog down. Because if not, you have to go through a very painful set of rabies shots if we can't find the dog.
Okay.
Quarantine it.
All right. The next question is it a resource issue or a COVID thing or budget thing? If it's money, how will we ever have the resources?
Captain East, did you want to answer that one, or did you want me to go ahead and answer that one?
I'm sorry, I'm putting you guys in the hot seat, but I'm just reading the questions here.
Will you read the question again, Steph?
It says, is this a resource issue or a COVID thing or a budget thing? If it's money, how will we ever have the resources?
Well, potentially some of it is related to COVID. We're still dealing with the pandemic. We're still dealing with those type of situations internally and externally.
Okay.
Some of it is just getting people hired.
Okay.
It's not that any budget was taken away. So I don't know if it's a pretty wide open question, but it's not that anything was removed. It's just trying to getting people hired and then getting that staff out there.
Okay. The next question here is, it has some colorful language in it, so I will not be asking that question. Zach, if you would like to include that in the notes, please see the YouTube channel. The next one is it says, please analyze resource/staffing and come back with it at the next meeting. The next comment is, what is the time frame for being properly staffed to meet the needs of calls?
That's a continual process. I mean, when we advertise the positions, and then we follow our HR rules. So once we get folks hired, then there's a training phase of it. So, I mean, you can look, I think the training is 10 weeks once we get them hired. So it's a continual process. So it's not a hard and fast, this is what the time is. Because we advertise, we have to vet the individuals and go from there.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions on the chat. Has Jan joined us yet? I don't see her.
I'll text her and see if we can find out where.
Okay. Do we have any more comments from the board as it pertains to the tethering laws and inclement weather?
My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
Well, Elaine started to talk about a sort of a gauge or something that was tied to the weather. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I know it might not solve these basic issues that we're having to cover, but I thought that was interesting. And you know, some of these things, when we see things in our neighborhood that we find, you know, unjust or unethical, it's important that we know what the laws are so that we can approach the people properly. And that's something that we are all hesitant to do as neighbors, is to try to engage around those situations. But I mean, I think that would be the ideal situation, would it not? Or a conclusion to it would be that if neighbors could talk to neighbors about those situations, and you know, maybe the people aren't aware of the laws. They don't think of it as cruel. They've lived on a farm and always have done things that way, you know, that sort of thing. That's the hope anyway, but.
Richard, I think that you hit on something that's really important, which we've discussed quite a few times the last few meetings, is the education portion to a lot of these. I mean, the difference between someone living on a farm and having a working dog is different than someone who has not lived on a farm, who lives in the city, who leaves their dog out. Those are different circumstances, especially the type of breed that the animal is. And so taking those things into account, and also seeing something, saying something, which you also hit on, Richard, I think is a good opportunity. It's a discussion point probably between neighbors. And maybe whenever we get through the education portion of our committee side, we can put something out to the neighborhoods, maybe the neighborhood associations through next door about those items, because sometimes they don't come where we are, we have to go where they are. And so that would absolutely be an opportunity there. I do see that Jan Jarman is out of court and has joined us. Good afternoon, Jan, thank you. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Oh, look, an attorney who doesn't want to talk. Oh boy.
Oh no.
And sorry, I'm late. I had a trial.
No, you're fine. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, we're rushing. We did have some questions that were proposed on the legal side of the tethering, as it accounts to when a neighbor or someone has seen an animal that has been tethered and law enforcement goes out, or animal control. Then they go from one end of the city to another call, and someone sits there recording or whatnot. Can you kind of go through the what you need to be able to prosecute in that regard? I know that we had some questions from our online portion from YouTube about, have we ever had anyone that had to pay the $1,000 fine for the tethering in the past? And also as it pertains to the prosecution side as well.
All right, I can tell you in terms of the penalty, no one's ever had to pay a $1,000 fine. You don't pay $1,000 fine on a domestic violence battery case. So it's just not, that wouldn't be a typical fine in any situation. You don't pay that on a homicide case, probably. It's just not a typical fine. The fine ranges from $0 to, I thought it was actually $2,500. And they would get a graduated penalty based on priors. These are not prosecuted much, as you all probably know, because they're hard. To answer your question, or the question on YouTube about, or somebody's question about prosecuting, if you had somebody who videoed the whole thing, I think that's sufficient. If you had a video of the entire incident, of the entire amount of time that they were on the tether, I would feel very comfortable showing that in court and prosecuting based on that. So I don't feel real comfortable if it's a non-law enforcement officer. So if it's like a neighbor who only testifies that that's what happened without having some kind of corroboration of a video. But video says it all.
Hey, Jan.
Yeah,
This is Dan. How are you?
fine, thanks.
Good question. So that came up on the video part. So if whether it was caught on a home surveillance camera, Ring doorbell, whatever it may be, if we would have those and we would bring those that have that corroborating evidence, the witness, this is my video system, and we go through that, those are things we could potentially move forward with issuing citations on.
Yeah.
Tethering.
Even if you had a neighbor who, like when I have barking dog cases, I'll tell neighbors, take out your cell phone and record it so we can hear. I get it, volume's funny with a barking dog, you can just increase the volume. But it gives the judge an idea of what it sounds like. So similarly, if you are in a neighborhood, I have people on my next door who complain about tethered dogs, especially when it was really cold. If they had the entire incident on a video, they would need to be willing to testify. And we would need to find a way to get it off their phone, which is the hardest part in the prosecutor's office. I'm sure there's a way. It's just they're big files, so it's not as easy as just shipping an email. But once we figure that stuff out, I would be comfortable using that in court, just like I would any other case.
Okay. We have ways that I think we could at least obtain the evidence and not have to, take the phone and keep it forever kind of thing. So, okay. And then I think Stephanie and Elaine and everyone hit, I think another component of this really is the public education side of it. When we start to hit, when we hit we're told by our weather folks that it's going to be very, very cold, ramp up the public education side to this. And when we're told it's going to get very, very warm or hot, or the humidity, that, the public education side, we should, that should be ramped up also on that side of it. You're muted, Stephanie.
Okay, I'm back. We did have one more comment that came in. It said, what about informational postcards describing the tether laws? I could see this working with the U.S. Postal Service. We did one on dog bites a few years ago. It was very well received. We had a lot of calls from that. And so I think that would be an opportunity in the education portion to get those out to our city area. And another, what would it take to get a dog removed from the yard that is a victim of being chained?
It is not a per se cruelty to chain a dog. It's against ordinance, but it's not necessarily cruelty. Now, it's different. That cold snap we had, that's cruelty to me. And we could probably get a search warrant and go take the dog. But we can't just, my opinion, I'm pretty conservative on this, but I like search warrants. They're not hard to get. They don't take that long, and they protect the city. So in a really cold snap, I feel comfortable. Otherwise, unless there was if the dog was injured from being tethered, we could call that a cruelty and we could seek to seize the dog. But generally, tethering a dog, while it's not palatable by all means, it's not necessarily cruelty unless there are other factors that are happening at the same with it.
One more thing, we had a suggestions of a large file upload to Dropbox, and then the city could retrieve it from a Dropbox, an upload. Basically, you could save from Dropbox to another computer. So, okay, do we have any more comments on the tethering laws and inclement weather?
You know, one of the things that we have in a neighborhood here to the north, there was a lot of discussion about a couple of Rottweilers that are left outside 24/7. It has a house that it can go into. They both can go into. There was a lot of concern about the welfare, and it went back and forth, and neighbors were kind of like getting exasperated and be like, you know, just call somebody, do something. It went on and on and on. So there are there not state cruelty laws that say, for instance, a dog, if it's going to be outside in the sun, has to have access to shade and fresh water, which could be used if documented as a sign of abuse?
Oh yeah, we do that. We have those cases every summer. Yeah.
And then breed, you know, people say you have to be aware of what breed it is. So some people think, and I guess it's accurate, you know, a dog that mushes sleighs in Alaska might be perfectly fine in the cold weather outside. So I don't know how far and how detailed that would get, if that's even something that is introduced into the equation, the breed of the dog.
That's interesting, and I'm not sure. If we had the 17 below, even that kind of dog, I don't think should be out. I feel comfortable taking that to the court. But if it was like 30, 35, I agree. It's probably different for that kind of dog versus a short-haired dog. Mm-hmm. I would probably want a vet's opinion on that.
You'd have to probably bring in a professional to testify.
I have one more question for you, Jan, that came in from YouTube. Would warrants be possible in after hours in severe weather situations?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
They're more difficult, but they're still possible.
Okay. And then also we had someone that commented the same mush dog will not survive 100-degree heat chained in the summer. So
yeah.
So,
and I will say, I haven't done these dockets in a while, but we had some pretty good animal control officers that would testify on those cases. They're not as good as a vet, but they did a good job on testifying, and we were fine with those types of cruelty cases using just the animal control officer. When they're appropriately trained, they do a pretty good job on testifying.
Does you have officers that are specifically trained for that, right? That do cruelty investigations. So is that the officer that would be dispatched on a call like that? Or would it be?
No, Richard, on animal cruelty cases, we have one officer, Officer Frazier, who does the animal cruelty investigations. It has the training to do so. Our animal control officers have training, have their basic training, and they're able to identify and can testify in regards to these types of cases.
So pretty much any of the animal officers could go on a call?
Yes.
Okay.
We'd use the regular ones, and they were great because they noticed things like shivering or if it's hot, panting, the same things we would have in like where we have to break out the window of a car to get a dog out of the car. So it's similar kind of case.
okay. Any more comments on tethering laws and inclement weather? Okay. We will move on to old business. We have Elaine Stephen, update responsible pet owner pamphlet. I know this morning I received an email that you guys have scheduled a meeting. And so if you want to give us an update.
Yeah, so we have a subcommittee meeting scheduled for noon on Wednesday, April 14th. That will be live streamed. just like this one. And it will also be by Zoom. And so the subcommittee is about, is trying to address some of the issues concerning just pet care, like especially cats and dogs, and hopefully address some of the issues like spaying and neutering cats, microchipping animals and keeping that microchip information up to date, tethering information, that kind of thing. What to do in cases of inclement weather regarding your animals. So if anybody has any ideas or any topics that we need to cover, I ask that they email me with those ideas or topics, because I know that other people are probably thinking of things that we haven't thought of. So my email is on the animal control website for this board. And so people can feel free to email me, and that would be awesome. But that's our update. Is we're meeting on the 14th of April.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Elaine. All right, the next piece to old business is Richard Ruth, board member, discussion of owned cats. Go ahead, Richard.
Muted. Okay, so I wanted to try to get a conversation going about owned cats. I think it was something that we didn't maybe have time to delve into too deeply. And my hope for putting out that mocking up a proposal was to generate discussion and interest. I got maybe 12, 13 emails. It was not from as wide a population as I had hoped. And I think that's one of the challenges that we've had historically, is hearing from folks that aren't directly involved in animal welfare, so just homeowners. But that may change with time. The idea behind addressing owned cats is simply to look at how we can curtail the stream of cats that enter into homelessness and ultimately into colonies, if that's something that we can get past. There is a variety of leash laws. I know people hear leash laws and some people giggle and some people get irate. But in my study of TNR in the subcommittee cities and also in 42 Kansas cities, both of them had about 70% where they had some form of at-large restrictions. And the variety and the way they manifested was really varied, quite varied. Some of them did talk about no, your cat can never leave the property. If it does leave the property, then it has to be on, constrained somehow in a carrier or on a literal leash. Some of them had restrictions on cats during estrus. Cats would be confined and kept separated. Some of them had restrictions that were, if your cat is in another person's yard and that person has notified you that you don't want the cat in your yard, then you're legally and financially responsible for getting your cat and keeping your cat off of that particular person's property. These are all related to owned cats. There were some concerns expressed about how it would affect TNR'd cats. And the reason why that wasn't addressed is because we don't have that currently. And I don't think that, I don't see these as impacting ear-tipped cats in any way. I've gotten feedback from people about the enforceability. I don't know how cities can restrict cats to be in a room away from other cats during estrus and, having that enforced. So I think a part of it is part of the education that happens as a result of ordinances, and the education piece of it, the pamphleting, the creation of memes, or whatever needs to happen to the education piece, is greatly assisted when there is an ordinance of some sort. But the purpose here was to not to vote on passing an ordinance today. That's obviously premature. Certainly, we need to just start the discussion on owned cats and see if we can figure something out in regards to that. So I saw one discussion, email discussion that was between Mike and Christy Fisher from Wall that I thought was really good and really opened my eyes to some of the positions that Wall has on this that I was not aware of. So I think I was a little hopeful after that. The emails are circulated among board members and the public, and ideally they would be able somehow to go out and draw in more people. I'm not sure. I know it's possible to do that. I'm just not sure how in a timely. Is it snowing outside? It's snowing outside.
It is. It's snowing.
Wow. Okay.
Rain snow.
So bizarre. If there were town halls, these can be done over Zoom. The reason why I like Zoom is because, people's schedules are so different, and we're able to go back and pull these up on YouTube or on Facebook and review them. And a lot of times when you're at a meeting, even if you've been to the meeting, you're engaged on some aspect, or you're thinking about something that was said 10 minutes ago and you're missing this, and having the ability to go back in the peace and quiet of your own home and being able to just kind of reflect on what was said, it changes opinions. I change my opinions. I'm able to adjust. I learn new things that I can then go and research. And so I really like the idea that we have the virtual piece of it, and I hope that continues for all city boards on into the future, in addition to the meetings in person. But having town halls, maybe even on, we have a problem in my district of at-large dogs, and so much so that many people do not go out and walk. They don't go out and walk their dogs, and there's a lot of fear. And so I private messaged a few of the people and said, would you like to get together in a very safe, private online forum and just talk about what your feelings are? How does this impact you as a person living a life in a place with this going on around you? And some of the people got back to me, some of the people didn't, but having those sort of intimate coffee discussions with limited numbers of people, of the general public, people in our neighborhood, our neighbors. I know that I would learn a lot from it. And I think it might help get a better idea of what's going on. And it's also in a district type scenario, right? Because you're on next door, you only see so many neighborhoods. And so you can kind of keep track of who you've talked to from what neighborhoods. And I'm sure that opinions are going to be different even within those neighborhoods, obviously. But yeah, so I think that's sort of my spiel here in the beginning.
I would like to start working on the issue of owned cats from an education perspective. Like, we've got the education subcommittee. Last time I had brought up, something about trying to deal with the owned cats and make sure that they're spayed and neutered and everything. the education subcommittee is what came out of that discussion. And so I think that this is going to be hopefully a good way to help owners understand or even find resources for spaying and neutering their cats. Help them understand that if when they adopt a kitten, if they start keeping it inside from the get-go, that it's going to be a whole lot easier to keep that cat inside, and the cat won't be as likely to develop that kind of craving to go outside. My two don't ever try to rush the door anymore, knock on wood, but they've been inside since I adopted them. And so that's not an expectation they have. Just kind of that is part of education though. So like you mentioned before, people who live in rural areas are used to being able to let their cats go inside and outside without issue. Maybe part of it is just helping people understand that it is so dangerous for cats to go outside. Cats who are used to going outside are not likely to change. But if they start when they adopt a kitten, so I guess just starting from the education piece,
I think education is critical, but I do believe that we have to have really serious, meaningful talks about ordinances to back up that education before we really get into the weeds on TNR, because it's a significant portion. And you make a good point. Cats that are already acclimated to going outside, that would be very difficult for them to not. So you look at mandatory spay neuter. Then if a cat goes outside, it's not going to get impregnated, right? And it's not going to contribute to exacerbating our problems that we have. We have had TNR activity in Wichita for a long time. It's continued to grow. There's been progress, I'm sure, but it hasn't been sufficient enough to really draw down the total population.
Well, and if I might, part of the reason that the TNR efforts so far have not been able to make a huge dent in the feral cat population in Wichita is because they are not codified into ordinance. And the TNR efforts in town right now are unofficial, and they're not supported by the city government. And so not having kind of that permission to operate within the city limits severely the amount of difference they can make. And so until we give the TNR efforts some sort of permission and ability to operate legally within the city of Wichita, I don't know that we can honestly tackle the issue of owned cats being at large. Because the people who emailed did have an excellent point about distinguishing between feral cats, stray cats, and just owned cats that are out just for the evening.
Yeah, I agree. They did have some good points about that. However, that was in the context they were thinking that all these cats had to be indoors, and that's not the case. And they were also thinking that feral cats and ear-tip cats would not be excluded. So a little bit of a compromise in the conversation with that. But I can see where changes to owned cats could coincide with the delivery of a TNR ordinance. But I don't see, saying, oh, well, let's give TNR a chance and then we'll come back to it, because that typically doesn't happen. And I think why shoot yourself in the foot out of the gate? There are people who are saying, hey, let's put in these owned cat legislations and see how that goes. And maybe we won't need TNR. I have a hard time with that line of reasoning. But I think, part of having a difficult time with this stuff is because of the in general, the way in which we as Americans talk about issues. We all have very highly personalized media sources, information sources, and we are in a environment of great hostility at times, right? Especially if we're primarily learning and discussing online. And so we tend to hunker down with things that we feel secure about, and we feel like we can argue good the more points we can make, and we tend to stay within those positions, and we don't get to move out of them. And people in general, I know I myself am very hesitant to go and speak in public about something if I have very little knowledge about it. Very few people are going to be willing to speak in public and risk, being embarrassed, basically, or being at a loss for words, or to look like they don't know what they're talking about, if they can't engage. And these are very difficult, highly charged, passionate discussions that people have, but they are also very much stovepiped, and that is what is killing our companion animals, our inability to find common ground and move forward with a good proposal. Somebody at work once said, the enemy of the good is perfection. And that's always stood with me, because we can try to get the perfect owned cat policy, the perfect TNR policy. We're always going to be away because we're so stovepipe. So again, yeah.
Rich, can I pop in for just a sec?
Yes.
So I do think that Elaine had a point about us not being able to really have a focused TNR effort. That I don't want to see us not being able to get either passed, because you said like feels like one or the other. I don't think that if doing owned cat regulations or TNR separately is necessarily going to keep the other one from happening, being able to be passed. And that's one of the beauties of having you guys on this education board, right? Is because you can continue to bring these things up. I know that TNR has been brought up for years and years, but the valid point is that it is proven to do well in communities. And if it was, acceptable within our city limits, having our facilities, our rescue partners, some of our national organizations to be able to make a true concentrated effort on TNR could go so far. That doesn't mean that owner regulations have to be mutually exclusive, but it also doesn't mean that, we have to do what some of our legislators love doing, which is tacking everything on together so that we have one big monstrous thing that we can't get past. I think handling them as individual efforts and policy changes would probably be a bit more wise, so that we can make sure that we are making progress. And just because you have TNR doesn't mean that we can't actually discuss owned regulations. I'm wondering if there are maybe some other things that we could discuss, like in our education committee. What are some other areas in owned regulations besides like the leash law, or things that we could do to provide resources to our animal control officers to help police that owned population a little bit differently?
Well, I think in order for them to police the owned population, they have to have an ordinance that allows them to do that. And I agree that a focused and concentrated TNR is important. And to me, that means a targeted TNR, where you move into an area and you focus, you get it to 80% or whatever the numbers they say is, and then you move on and you do the next area, as opposed to, hello, this is TNR, where do you want me to go? And you have this scattershot approach. But it's interesting. We're talking about owned cats, and it's impossible not to go into the TNR thing.
I just don't understand why owned cats is even a concern. I mean, why is codifying the idea that cats are pets and they have to, if you have a pet, you have to have some pet responsibility. I don't get why. I mean, that is the spigot, that's where feral cats come from, is from pets. And if we don't have pet ownership, if we don't have some way of saying, hey, this is a good way to be a pet owner, and this is how you have to take care of your pet. If we don't ever do that, we will never get anywhere with TNR at all, ever. It won't go anywhere. It won't do anything. If you can't say, this is how you have to be a good pet owner. You have to start with the people, and you have to start with the pets. And anything you do after that isn't going to matter if you don't turn off the spigot over there. If you don't make pet owners be responsible. And that has to come first. It just has to.
The question I have, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So a couple things here. I agree with you. We do have to put the responsibility on the pet owners. However, I'm not quite sure how law enforcement is going to be able to enforce that, which is a huge issue. So we could put all these ordinances into place, but animal control is already spread incredibly thin. So that's a concern that I have, is how the heck are we going to even get this to be enforced realistically? My other thing is with TNR.
How do they enforce dog license?
Do they enforce dog license on every single person in the city?
Yeah. I mean,
They do?
I think that's the same argument. I mean, like,
well, I mean, do they go house to house to see if you have a dog, and then if
Right.
you have a license? They don't do that.
just-
They don't have time for that.
No, they don't. They don't. And
that's my
So
point too.
if I could just if I could complete my thought, please. Okay, just a second. So the other thing is with TNR, I think if they were recognized and had the full support of the community, they could go ahead and increase funding so they can go ahead and be more effective. Right now, they're trying to do the best that they can, but they don't have, they don't qualify for grants or anything like that because they're not recognized by the city. So that's the other problem. They are effective if they have the funding to do it. And they do take calls from, I volunteered with a group that does this just so I could educate myself, because I honestly, when I first started doing this, I didn't quite understand the whole cat colony thing, So I presented to an organization and assisted with just the TNR process in general. And actually, it runs rather smoothly. I think if there was more groups like them that did it that way, we would probably definitely put a big dent in the feral population. So I do think that an ordinance does need to be passed for TNR. I don't think that it needs to be as complex as it was presented before. I think if we kind of maybe amend some of some things are already on the books, I don't think it has to be this complicated. And I've said this before, and I'd be happy to send an email to you guys with some recommendations on some of the ordinances that could be amended to maybe kind of help get this process going. I did kind of do a little social experiment here, Richard. I have 2 cats and they're very ornery. But I tried really hard to put a leash on them. And I'm going to tell you what, it was not a pretty sight. I just really had the concern just watching them. Safety, number one, for themselves, because they freak out. And it's like, oh my God, these guys are going to hurt themselves, or, God forbid. So I don't understand that portion of the ordinance. So that's definitely something that I would want to look at differently. And like the catio that was in the ordinance as well. I'm fortunate enough to have an enclosed area underneath a structure that's rather large, so that my cats can be in an enclosed structure, but not everybody can do that. So maybe if we reevaluate that part of the ordinance, maybe the community might be more receptive. But I do agree we need to start somewhere. So, and then the other thing is, Richard, like you mentioned, interacting with the community. I think it's really important that we do interact with the community, but I do think we also need to remember that we're representing the advisory board and not our own personal opinions on these things. I do see quite a bit where a lot of our own personal emotion or views go into this, and we're not really being receptive, or some are not being receptive to what the members of our community or some of the other rescues are conveying to us. So I think it'd be really important for us to kind of take a step back, take the emotion out of it that we feel personally, and properly represent the community in which we have been selected, to represent. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on this whole thing.
Absolutely. And that the last point I think is super, super important. And it goes back to the discussion about how we discuss and we silo and we dig in and we become passionate and all that stuff. And that needs to be toned down and disappear when you sit on a board and have discussions. Interestingly enough, the proposal that I put out there was directly from citizens in my district, as well as in District 6, people who were just really sick and tired of having these cats in their yard all the time. The leash piece is sort of a red herring. I mean, they call them leash laws. They're restrictions on running at large, and there's a wide variety of those restrictions. There is actually a law in Wichita's animal ordinances that will allow the police chief to go door to door and check that dogs are properly licensed. Would they do it? Probably not.
Right, exactly.
So,
I mean, I'm sure they can, but they don't have the resources for it.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's a good enough reason not to pursue these ordinances. They're educational. They represent the morality of a people at a particular point in time that says we value these animals greatly, and so here's what we're going to do. So, but it also gives recourse in the event that there's something serious. Tethering has certain requirements. The police don't go out. They have a difficult time getting there. It's one of the last things that they do on their list. They don't do a lot of that right now with dogs. So I don't think that's a showstopper. I think it's beneficial to continue to talk about the owned cat piece, whether it's with a leash law or other elements, in a board type of way, with the idea that, one, we all maintain our dignity, and that the solution that we arrive at is mindful of both two-legged and four-legged residents, tamed and wild, to as much as possible. I mean, because therein, those populations, everyone has to give. I don't think there's no perfect laws, and there's no perfectly policed laws. And we don't want to live in a community where laws would be policed 100% of the time. That is not what we want.
So I have two kind of questions or concerns. At the last meeting, Lieutenant Hungria had said that if we had an ordinance like this, it would significantly add to the workload of animal control and make it very difficult for them to do what they need to do and follow up on all of the cases they need to follow up on. That is one. The second is, if the goal of this is to educate cat owners and improve, make sure that cats aren't adding to the feral population. If the goal is education, do we need an ordinance to educate, or can we educate through other means?
I don't think that the goal is purely educational. The goal is also to protect property owners from undue advances onto their domicile. It's not purely educational.
The educational component of it, and setting out these rules in a way that can be referred back to, when you put it in a city ordinance, it's constant. It's always there. If you make a pamphlet that pamphlet goes away as soon as you send it out. And that's super transient. And there's no central place for like, now I've just moved to Wichita and I own a pet, and what is my responsibilities and ownerships? And I'll look at the city laws to see, and they can go and they can look and they can see, and they'll find out that they need to register their pet or whatever. But just hoping that they get the educational message is sort of, it's weak. It's not important, but it's weak. And that's why you put these things into a law, is so that you can say, there, it's over there. We all agree that you should have your cat spayed or neutered. We have a thing in there that it needs to be vaccinated against rabies, but we don't have any way of checking to see if a cat has been, or tracking it or anything. We don't have any, because we don't have any licensure. We don't have any way to follow up.
Well, as far as the pamphlet, I think part of that is a little bit of confusion about the education subcommittee. The goal is not just a pamphlet. The goal is an educational campaign, long-term, with resources continually available.
Yeah, but I mean, an ordinance can last 50, 60 years, 100 years. It can be forever, but an educational pamphlet isn't, never will be.
Yeah, those are, I mean, they're valid points. I think that the over time, if you have, say you had mandatory spay neuter and you had mandatory microchipping of owned cats, all right, we're not talking about feral or what have you, owned cats. Look at what we do now with dogs. We have, if your dog is out, you got to pay a fine to get it back. And the neighbors scramble, they do everything they can to help the neighbor get that dog back. All of that came about because it's expensive, it's dangerous, and people love their animals and want to see them come back. So if you have a microchip in a cat, in an owned cat, someone picks it up. Hey, I found a cat. They put it on Nextdoor. They put it wherever, and they can take it to a vet and get it scanned. And the police department never have to get involved. It's citizens taking care of citizens. Now, I understand that historically, dogs were a threat to livestock. They can do grave bodily harm to human beings, and cats were left out of the equation, I think, primarily because they were very useful to be at large in an agricultural context. They were essential for the financial well-being of the community. So I think that some of the people's concerns in the emails, they pointed to the differences in the animals and why there were leash laws on dogs. And yeah, I mean, absolutely, that is why, because dogs do harm. And but I don't think that the exclusion of cats has benefited cats, and I don't think that it's benefited them as a companion animal. Not having them is they're more likely to end up on the streets, and
Okay, so in the effort of moving the conversation forward, I have a few notes that I'd like to go through. I asked specifically earlier when Lieutenant Hungria was speaking about the priority of calls, about whether or not they go to cat calls the way it is with the staffing. I am under the impression that we are understaffed at Wichita Animal Services, which I think is a completely different discussion to be had. And I think that that is extremely important when we're looking at enacting some of these ideas. Richard, I have to give you some good kudos, because I did not believe this conversation was going to go in the manner that it did today. I too read all of the 24 emails that I received that opposed a leash law of some sort, and 0 that were for. And I do agree with you that I would like the public to see those, because there were some very good discussion points in there that you had pointed out earlier. And I think that some of these people that emailed us, they have a very keen sense of what we're dealing with and how we progress forward and where we go from here. Unfortunately, I think that we all agree that feral cats are part of our issue here. We do not currently have a TNR ordinance here in the city of Wichita. Feral cats are here and they're here to stay, and whether we like it or not, it boils down to, do we want them reproducing or not reproducing in that sense? I do agree that pet ownership responsibility is an important topic. How we treat dogs seems to be different than how we treat cats to the people who are responsible pet owners. And that's truly a shame. And I think that that can be addressed through some education as well. Feline overpopulation, that's our bigger discussion. How do we limit the population of that? And how do we make people understand the difference between, in the current laws, the difference between stray cats, an owned cat, and a feral cat? We can put it in an ordinance all day long. We can talk about it, and until they see an example and or a structure of what that looks like to them, they may not understand that. I think at this point, what I'm hearing from the board is we're willing to take a calculated risk to make improvement. We have to start somewhere, as you indicated earlier, Richard. And I would like to see us set our animal services officers up for success versus letting them continue to experience burnout and not being mindful of that when we're creating ordinances. Our board, I feel, is solution-based, and there is a compromise somewhere amongst all of this today. And I think that we are on the right track to be able to find a compromise. I did find it interesting, Richard, that your comments about meeting with neighborhoods and people that we know as sort of like a town hall, like what the city of Wichita did about the mask mandate. That may be a way for us to set up a town hall where everybody gets 3, 4, 5 minutes, whatever we deem necessary, and they can, we can set up a place where they can go speak, or we can set up a time for them and record that, so that will be available for all of our members and for members of the public. We have a lot of passionate citizens here. We have very passionate and loving people who care a lot about this. Statistics that we see, I would like to see that say that they're unbiased, but the people that are doing the research on this aren't necessarily unbiased. We know that. So you're never going to have a 100% foolproof way of proving whether or not TNR is 100% working, or own cats is working, or a leash law, or across the board spay and neuter. It's where we go from here. And I think that we are, just from this meeting today, we are taking a proactive approach to get something to the city council that will be amenable to everyone that has joined us here today and that have sent emails. So I do want to read a few of the comments that I have seen online. Let me scroll back up here. Give me a moment. Previous board minutes say that if you feed it, you own it. So colonies are owned according to our city ordinance, which is correct. Please explain how a citizen can own a feral cat. 93% of pet cats are sterilized according to the American Pet Products Association. I'm not familiar with that, so if anyone is, please speak up. Local TNR is already targeted. 80% of kittens are born to feral cats, according to the Humane Society of the United States. We are down to 4 animal services officers, and if you want to rattle the cages, maybe sending the city manager you're concerned can get these vacancies filled. Rules and ordinances have to be enforceable. It is very sad this has to be said. How do you leave your dog or cat out in the elements? I also agree about a law altering all animals. They multiply so quickly. We need to worry about the animals that are here instead of allowing the creation of more. Unfortunately, some owners just don't care, like the majority of the 24/7 tethered dogs. Irresponsible owners do not have a regard for the animal's life. It does not matter if they are lost, loose, hit by a car, or in danger of euthanasia. They get another and animal pays the price. I think educating the public on how quickly they multiply and making programs to make it easier for alterning should be a definite goal. It's a big issue, one step at a time. If you have cat ordinances, will the animal services enforce them? If staffing/funding doesn't exist for tethered dogs, why would we believe that the funds would be for enforcing cat ordinances? Why don't the TNR folks make a plan to TNR the 100,000 cats in the area and tell us how much it will cost? Don't make me come out of my cave again. I know that guy.
Yeah.
We all do.
We all know him. Yep. The TNR people do not have a plan. Oh, I'm sorry, do have a plan and have been steadily working on it. There are gradually doing more and more spay and neuters every month. There was more TNR during last year and the pandemic than the previous year. Again, at 1,000 cats a year or even 10,000 cats, when do you get 80% of 100,000? And those are our public comment that we've had today. Do we have any more conversation from our board? And my question is, where do you guys want to go from here? Do we want to set up a town hall, a special meeting to talk about this? Or do we feel like our job is to better help get the resources into Wichita Animal Services with staffing to be able to provide, people and when the ordinance changes?
So if I may, please. I really do think that our top priority should be, how do we assist animal control with their staffing? That is a constant thing across the board that the community does talk about on a regular basis. Although I do think the town hall meetings are a very good idea as well. So I would like to encourage all of the people that sent emails to us, because we did get quite a bit of them. Really love the correspondence. Can you maybe give us some feedback as to what you would like for the ordinance to say? Or, it's easy to say, oh, I don't like this. This is ridiculous. Oh my gosh. Okay, great. Now give us some suggestions as to how to make this better. So we could be doing these town hall meetings. We can multitask here. We can try to conquer the staffing issue, but also still continuously work on trying to get something figured out. But I do want to encourage members of the community to give us some solutions, give us some ideas, so we can pass something that is manageable for the law enforcement and reasonable as well.
Richard, you were next.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about why is our advisory board, or how would our advisory board be involved with dealing with the staffing, since that is Robert Layton's area, and it's kind of his thing seems to be to shut down ultimately the sheltering part of the animal shelter. So wouldn't this be kind of chasing windmills?
I'm not sure if it would be chasing windmills. I see the Animal Services Advisory Board, we were appointed by the City Council to help make changes to make Wichita Animal Services better. And if we as a group collectively have noticed that there is an issue with animal services, we should be voicing those ideas. And if it's something that is easily taken care of, I think that we should make that contact to them and say, okay, so we know we're down a few officers. What do we need to do to get officers in that building? What do we need to do to be able to enforce the current ordinances at hand? Is it a budget issue? Is it that everybody's just busy and it's sitting somewhere and someone needs to take a look at it? Where do we need to go? So I guess, Captain East, what would be your recommendation for this particular topic?
I can tell you that as far as the open positions, I think we have done the requisitions for them. It's not like they're sitting anywhere. And we are also, as far as I say, the police department, we are following up on those requisitions. It's just, things take a while to get through a system. I mean, through government. And so I had a conversation yesterday in one of my meetings, and the notifying saying, hey, that we are down these positions. We need to get these moving and get things going forward, get these positions going forward. So, I can't tell people not to voice their concerns by any means, but we are addressing it. And so I believe as we were sitting here, during this meeting, one of the recs, it looks like I know at least one of the positions has been approved to go out for hiring. Has just come through. So
excellent.
We still have more to go, but we'll take what we can get.
Is there a need for us to present some sort of a motion on staffing? Is there more research that we need to do? Do we need to have more conversation with fellow board members of your department, things like that?
If you're asking, I mean, I don't know what you would have as far, you said research? Research. Okay, thank you. Sorry. I don't think as far as the research side of this, like I said, hiring is always a challenge. Mm-hmm. And so, like I told you, sitting here right now, one of the approvals came through for us to post the position and start that process. And between Lieutenant Hungry and myself, this is not falling on deaf ears. We are letting folks know that, we need to hire these positions.
Yes. Well, good. And that is, and I just wanted my own personal opinion on that too, is that, and this is why I'm excited about the potential for the education subcommittee, is empowering citizens, empowering neighbors to continue neighboring across difficulties and not having to reach out to the city to come in and solve their problems. Because in some neighborhoods, in my neighborhood here, it's very difficult to get people to come down and solve our problems. I was working on a place in Sosi and I put in something about I needed grading in an alley. It was a huge divot and cars were bottoming out because he had to go in there, and the homeowner was complaining to me. That was 6 months ago. And so we need to find ways that we can do things on our own, not just for animals, but for all these things that we call nuisances. And, I know people are probably sick of hearing me say these things, but I really believe that it's so fundamental. If we value diversity, then we need to get out of our heads and we need to get with our neighbors and find out what their interests are and understand that their suffering is our own suffering, right? If someone can't afford trash service and they're burning trash in their backyard, it's your suffering when you have all that smoke coming into your house. Okay, that's kind of another area, but it's the same with our pets, with our companion animals, with our kids. If your neighbor is, if their kids are throwing stuff at your animals or behaving unruly, these are things, how do we deal with these? How do we engage with our neighbors about these topics in a way that leads to a resolution, doesn't damage anybody's sense of dignity, and importantly, doesn't isolate neighbors further? Because when we sit and talk amongst ourselves in our chat rooms and on Nextdoor about somebody's dog over there, and then we call up the police and they come to that house, even if it's not a dog thing, if it's a tall grass and weeds or anything, that person's place in the community is wrecked. It's wrecked. Imagine how you would feel if that happened to yourself. And so that's what pains me the most, I guess, about community life, is just the difficulty it is in resolving these difficulties, which are really ancient and simple. I'm hopeful that can be done. Very hopeful that can be done. But that too is going to take time, just like staffing is going to be taking time, and there's always going to be exceptions. And so I think we need to make sure that citizens are protected by law, as well as making that effort to educate and ensuring that we're not passing laws that are, or making proposals for laws that are going to disenfranchise people from the communal experience and from having peace in their properties and enjoying community life, or making it more difficult for them, as some people brought up about the financial cost of some of these proposals.
So Richard, what I hear you saying is that you are really looking for more of a public input, and that's where the town hall comes into effect here. I would like to get with the city and research how they would like that done, because we feel that that's an important need. Mike, you're down there kind of being wiggly. Do you have something you want to add? No? Okay. I thought you had something to say. I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure you had the opportunity.
Yeah, I think, but Stephanie, let me clarify about the town hall. I think a large town hall would be an interesting endeavor, but I want to encourage people in their own Nextdoor accounts to invite their neighbor to sit with them on a Zoom. A free Zoom is nice because it cuts you off at 45 minutes, so you're not going to get too much stuff. It's not a huge commitment in time. It gives you an opportunity to learn about your neighbor. And just if we approach a big city one is nice, but we know what can happen. People are hesitant to come and speak in public about their opinion, but the people who are like ourselves and the people that are on our call, they don't have that problem. We need to reach people who are afraid to come out and express themselves in large groups or on topics such as this, which are complicated. That's where these little smaller ones. So I just want to encourage people to do that in your neighborhoods. I certainly will be reaching out to my neighbors, and let's see what we can come of it.
I want to make sure that every member of the public, if they have something to say, can say that and can voice that opinion. And it may work better that we obviously have to have some of these things on the record, and some of them they don't need to be, right? So we do receive emails. We have received a lot of emails in the last few days, and I'm going to include those in my packet to the city when we're completed, because I think that there are some good conversation in those packets that the general public doesn't always get an opportunity to see. And I think that those points are important for us, especially at the board level. So I would like to propose going, probably meeting with the city. I'll probably need Dan and Lieutenant Hungaria to meet with the city as well, to maybe set up some sort of a town hall meeting about this particular topic. And that way, in the event that there are people that do not want to come speak, if they would like to email something in, I would be happy to read it. I don't even have to read their name, just as long as we have their opinion, just to make sure that everyone's voice is heard and everyone is included. Another thing, and I think that that's probably where we need to start. The next item on our agenda is about the TNR discussion, and I know Patrick is not here today, but I think we kind of lumped all of those things in today with this discussion as well. And I think that this is probably an ongoing discussion of where we go with TNR, any type of CAT ordinances, how we're going to clarify those things to get cleaned up. and get something in a proposal form to the Wichita City Council. And I would like to see us do that in some fashion, hopefully within a few meetings. And so if you would allow me to, I would like to ask the city how we can do some sort of a town hall and get public opinion on the record as well.
Is that a motion or just?
I mean, I guess it's a motion. Would you guys let me? Is that okay? I make a motion that you allow me to ask.
Yeah, have
for a
that.
town hall setting?
I'm favorable of you having that discussion. You mentioned that about this particular topic, and I just want to make sure that you clarify that for people, that this particular topic is broad, that it's pet ownership, it's cat ownership. It's not just about, a leash law, because that, unfortunately, that was a little bit of a red herring. The intention was to stir the pot. It certainly did, but unfortunately, people got tripped up on the leashes.
Right. I mean, I have a hard enough time getting a leash on my dog sometimes, and he's 2 pounds. So same as a cat.
Yes.
So in the effort to keep this meeting a little more timely, we do have a couple of other items that we need to get to on the agenda that I would like to move forward with, and then bring back to the board what the city says about a town hall and a continued discussion about that. The next thing are issues and updates from board members. Do we have any others?
I think I've spoken to the ones that I had
Perfect.
on this.
Thank you. Captain East, I have a request, please. In 2019, this board received CORA training and Open Records Act training. I think that we are probably due with the new members on the board to have that in some sort of fashion. I kind of noticed some things over the last week as we continued to get lots of emails, and I wanted to make sure that we are doing everything that we are supposed to be doing in light of the city. So I was wondering if I could make a formal request to have that training, whether it be by Zoom, I'm pretty sure that's going to happen, or in person. Last time they had everyone come to City Hall and do all of the committees and boards together. I don't think that's probably going to work in this venue. So
I will look into that, and I will let you know. Also, to answer, I think, the question when you asked me about the staffing, what I would say is give Lieutenant Hungary and I time to let us work through this. We're making headway with it, and we'll report back to you.
excellent. Thank you very much. Do I have any other issues and updates from any other board members? Okay, we do have another area of public comment, and I have some other comments here online that were not into each discussion. So I'm going to go back and hit all of those. There was something about chickens. Hold on a minute. Oh, okay. What are the rules about having chickens in backyards? That's going to be either a Jan, Lieutenant, or Captain answer, I believe.
I think Jan left, but I think I'll look it up again, but I believe it's 3 hens. No roosters, please.
Please don't have any roosters. Okay. Okay, how would changing animal services staffing levels address the feral cat population? Without a law on the books, how would animal services staffing change that situation at all? Do we think that we have covered that since we talked about not having a TNR ordinance in place? Yes, okay. The board advocating for staffing brings it to the council and the public's attention. Sometimes just putting the light of day on something helps. I think that everyone in this meeting has made kind of a pledge to Lieutenant East that, or I'm sorry, to Captain East, that we will hold off on our protesting, I guess you should say. Staffing is now a problem, not just the feral cat population is addressed. There is no doubt it would bring the issue of staffing to the council and public, but I'm not sure how that would directly shed light and address the feral cat population. have you read the current city ordinances on cats? And I'm saying shed light on the staffing problem, not regarding cat population. Staffing has been a problem for years. So all of those comments were pretty much about staffing. So do I have any? Yes, Mike.
On the chicken question, it is 3 with no permit, but you for a $25 permit you can have 4 to 12 chickens and up to 25 pigeons. There you go.
Well, that's fun, but no roosters.
No roosters.
No roosters. Please, no roosters. Okay. The next meeting is May 19th at 4 p.m. We have the location marked down as KHS. So it is a possibility this board could go back in person. But as we continue moving forward, I will be in touch with all of you to let you know where we will be meeting, either on Zoom or in person. So thank you very much for coming today. I appreciate it. Oh, Richard got his dog. So thank you so much. Have a good evening, everybody. Stay warm. Enjoy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.